Hey guys, it's Jessie V. So today's V time is gonna be a little scary, a little creepy, because I know you guys said last week that you're down for some serious videos. So today's V time story is called The Haunted School. Now the school I'm gonna talk about is actually a school that I went to very recently. This school is called Humber College, Lakeshore. I was going there for graphic design for 3 years, and it has the coolest history ever. So I thought I would share it with you guys. Now let me just warn you, if you get freaked out by like ghost and spirit stories, maybe this is not the video you should be watching, but it is really cool, so I'd suggest sticking around, seeing if you like it. Also, if you don't believe in ghosts and spirits and stuff, that's cool. Everyone can have their own opinion about this. I don't even know if I believe in it personally. But just don't comment and make fun of the people who do believe it. Everyone has their own opinions. Let's all respect each other, okay? If you don't believe this stuff, it's still cool to watch just to hear some of the cool history. Let me get into it now. So Humber College wasn't always a college. It actually used to be an insane asylum. It was built in the 1800s, and it used to be called Mimico Branch Asylum. So at this asylum, the nurses and the doctors would make the patients work really hard outside. So they would make them plant, they would make them clean, and they never got paid for this work because the doctor said it was a form of therapy for them. What was kind of disturbing is the patients also had to assist in making coffins and burying deceased patients in the asylum cemetery. So I'm going to show a picture in a second just to give you guys a better idea of what this asylum looked like. It had a bunch of small buildings in kind of like a square shape. So there would be a few buildings for the women and a few buildings for the men. So they were called like different wards, and they separated the genders. And here's a picture. So underneath the asylum, they actually had some tunnels, and these tunnels were built to quickly travel between the buildings. They also had miniature railroad tracks in these tunnels that would deliver food to the different patients. And these tunnels at the now college are still used sometimes by staff on special occasions, and sometimes they'll actually have some tours of the tunnels. And in these tunnels, staff and students multiple times have said they've seen different ghosts and spirits show themselves to them, and there's actually a lot of creepy stories which I'll get into afterwards. Another thing that was really disturbing about this asylum was that the doctors would take the children of the patients, so if they had a baby or if they had an aborted fetus, they would take these little babies and they would bury them in a cemetery. And what's sad is they had, I think, over 1,500 graves of these babies, but because the babies didn't have any names, they just put numbers. And even today, by my college, they still have these little graves. I mean, a bunch of them are completely ruined, but I think there's 36 that are still standing. Just the numbers on the graves. There's no names of the babies, and people still put flowers by them. And then really close to the asylum, there was a powerhouse which had a huge smoke stack coming out of it. And apparently the hospital would use this to burn deceased patients sometimes, so the smoke coming out of it was just the bodies burning. Really gross. And it's actually still standing today, so I've seen it multiple times. It's a little disturbing. This asylum didn't have any padded cells, but they did do a lot of therapy on these patients. So there would be like electroconvulsive therapy, insulin shock therapy, restraints including straitjackets, and lobotomy, and this was just all part of the treatment at this asylum. So this asylum closed in 1979, and Humber College signed a 99-year lease to use the building, so to renovate them into a college. All the buildings are still the same, obviously like they've been renovated, but they have not knocked down any of the structures. I just thought it was so cool. Like, I just started doing research on the history and all of the ghost stories, so I know a lot about the stuff that used to go on. Ghost hunters go to the college a lot to investigate. Obviously, it's usually at night when the college is closed, but security guards often catch them and tell them to leave the property. But Humber actually has let a few film crews go onto the site and do some filming thing for TV shows. There was actually a documentary done, and there's a 5-minute clip on YouTube, so I'm just gonna put the link in the description for you guys to check out. It's just a couple of the staff talking about different ghost stories that they've encountered and a lot of pictures of what the insane asylum looked like, and as you could tell, I mean, it looks just like how the college is now. Obviously the pictures are black and white and it looks a lot older, but Humber really hasn't changed a lot of what, you know, it used to look like. There's actually one building that they couldn't renovate. It's actually right beside one of the buildings that I have most of my classes in, and there's just lots of mold and asbestos, and every single time they try and renovate it, they just can't because, you know, the floors keep collapsing, they keep getting more and more asbestos every time they clean it out. They just can't renovate it for some reason, and that's where most of the ghost stories happen. So, you know, students have tried to like sneak in, break into this one building that can't be renovated, and so they boarded the windows, and it's really hard to get into now. So there's a few, actually not a few, there's a lot of instances where people have seen the spirits of the patients or the nurses, and I'm going to talk about a few. There's this time a few years ago where students snuck into the underground tunnel, and right now it's blocked off. I'm pretty sure it's locked, but this might have happened when they didn't have a lot of security on this tunnel. So these students snuck in, they thought it would be fun, they're going through the tunnel, and all of a sudden they hear this like whistling, and they don't know where it's coming from, and so they're walking through the tunnel and it just doesn't stop. It's just all this whistling, and it's really eerie because this whistle is like a kind of a creepy tune. It sounded like it was coming from a man, and so they left and they were way too scared to go back in. There was this other instance quite a while ago where a construction worker was renovating the tunnel, and while he was working in the tunnel, he rounded a corner and he saw this woman walking in front of him. He thought this was really odd, and when he got a little closer, he saw she was wearing like a nurse outfit. So he called out to her and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you in the tunnel?" And she just kept walking, and she turned a corner, and when he caught up with her, she had disappeared. So he was really freaked out. He didn't believe in ghosts, so he thought he'd continue searching the tunnel for her because he thought it was just like a woman in the tunnel for some reason. So he rounded another corner, and in the very end of the hallway, there she was, but her back was turned to him, so she was kind of facing a wall, not moving. And again, he was like, miss, what are you doing?" And she slowly turned around, and it was revealed that she didn't have a face. And so this construction worker got really creeped out and ran out of the tunnel and refused to go back in there to do renovations. And while I was doing research, I found out that there was this nurse who had an affair with one of her patients, and this got found out by the doctors, and they had to punish the patient, and the nurse was fired, and so she hung herself on one of the apple orchard trees right beside the asylum, and so apparently she just haunts the tunnels and some of the buildings. Another story is from a security guard who did the night shift. As you could tell, a lot of these things happen at night and from maintenance workers, which is really creepy. So the school had closed, and he turned on all the alarms, locked the doors of the buildings, and he was patrolling the outside of the buildings. He walked by this one building and he saw movement in one of the windows, like someone just quickly walked by the window. So he shone his flashlight up. He's like, "What the heck? Who's in there?" And he couldn't see anything. So obviously he went inside the building to see if anyone had snuck in, because obviously he knew that a lot of like ghost trackers sneak into the buildings and different students, so he wanted to make sure that no one was in there. So he unlocked the door, and just before he turned the lights on, he heard this loud crash. And so he got freaked out, turned the lights on, and a garbage can had just been knocked over, and it was going around in circles. You know, if you like knock something over and it kind of just spins for a while or rolls, that's what was happening, and he was really creeped out. So he took out his walkie-talkie and spoke to another security guard who was across campus and said, "Look guys, like I think someone broke into one of the buildings, we have to check this out." So got another security guard to go into the building with him, and they couldn't find anything. So, and the next night he was working there, he turned off all the lights, turned the alarm on and everything else, and right before he left the building, he heard this long sigh right by the staircase, and he knew it was like a human kind of sigh, and it was really creepy. There was no one there, but he heard it, and he never went back there. He decided to do daytime shifts, and he didn't want to be around the buildings anymore. Then there was this story from a student. This student was sitting by her locker in the basement of the building, which is where I had my locker for like 2 years, so this totally creeps me out to hear this. But she was sitting by her locker doing some homework, and she was the only one in the basement because it was getting late into the night and no one was really around the school anymore. So she's sitting there and she sees this woman come through one of the fire exits and completely just walks right by her and heads to the door that's the staircase door. This woman had like long brown hair, this like long white kind of gown, and she was walking extremely slow and looked like she was in a days. So the student was just compelled to follow her because, I mean, it was just a really strange occurrence. So she got up to follow this girl, and once she got to the door that this lady had gone through, she had disappeared. Like, she didn't see any sign of her, and it was really creepy. There was this other student another day that was working late at night in a classroom. There was no one else in the classroom, and she was doing her work, and all of a sudden she heard this humming, and it was the tune of Ring Around the Rosie, and apparently it went on for about 30 seconds, and then it kind of just stopped. And then there's another story I have. A teacher told me. She told us that a year before she had been staying really late at night at the school to finish her work. It was the part of the building where it used to be the insane asylum's kitchen, so which was now her office was where the kitchen used to be. And so at the same time every night at like 11 p.m. she got this scent of like freshly made food, and it always happened at like 11 p.m. at the same time, and it was very strange. And she'd walk around the building and no one else would be there, and she was thinking like, who's cooking this food? Very weird. So now that you guys know some of the history and the creepy stories, I actually have 2 stories of my own that happened to me while I was at this school. To this day, I don't know if they were spirits. There could have been a rational explanation, but I'm just gonna tell you anyway. So first year of college, I was in one of the buildings which used to be a morgue, and I was in the basement in a classroom, and I was all by myself because I was finishing a lot of work that I had, and I was waiting for my mom to pick me up, and I was sitting at one of the desks, and I was really involved in my work, so I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on around me. And I look up, and there's this other girl in the classroom who wasn't there before, and when I looked at her, it really startled me because she was staring straight at me, and she had this long brown hair. I just told you guys a story about how a girl saw someone roaming through the hallway looking the same way, and I didn't know that at this time because I only found out this story recently. But yeah, this girl was just staring right at me, and she looked really dazed, and it was weird. And I didn't say anything to her. I was like, okay, this girl's just sitting in here waiting for somebody or something. So I go back to my work, and about 5 minutes later, I look up again at her, and she's still staring at me. It's like her expression hasn't changed. She's still looking at me, still sitting in the same way, and I felt really uneasy because just the way she was looking at me was extremely weird. And I thought, okay, while I was involved in my work, she probably walked past me in the classroom and I didn't notice her. But anyway, I started getting really freaked out, and I was starting to pack up my stuff, and just before I left, I looked back over and she wasn't there, and I was just really creeped out. I remember coming home and telling my mom about this, and she did believe me, but she was like, Jess, there's probably something rational, like there's probably a reason. You probably didn't see her come into the room or leave the room. I don't know. And then there was this other time, and it happened when I was alone both times. I had gone into the washroom of the same building, actually. I saw that girl. So I was in the washroom doing my stuff, and I hear someone come in, and like, you know, when you hear like the door open, it makes that like squeaking noise, it closes, you hear their footsteps, and they go into the next stall. So it had just been me to start with in the washroom, so I knew this girl had come in. So when I was coming out of my stall, I was washing my hands and stuff, fixing my hair, and I didn't hear this girl anymore. And you know when you can see someone's feet like in the stall? I didn't see anything, and I was like, hey, this girl definitely didn't leave because I would have heard it. I would have heard the door open and everything. And there was no one in there with me. It was just the strangest thing. I heard someone come in, I heard their stall close, but there was no one in there. And of course I was a creep, and I like looked underneath the stalls to see if I could see feet. Maybe her feet were a bit higher up. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing, and it was weird. And the next story I have, I know I told you I had 2, but I just remembered a third one. It was first year again, and I had made this friend and this guy friend, and we were just kind of exploring the campus, and we came up to the G building, which was the one they can't renovate. They just keep having issues renovating, so the whole thing is like boarded up and stuff. And as we're approaching the building, we see there's like this like bench right by the building, and we're walking up, and on this bench we see this like man, and he looks really serious. He's kind of like looking off into like nowhere, and he's wearing like a white dress shirt and black pants, and he's just sitting there, and we're like, this is weird, because like we thought maybe he was a teacher or something, but he just looked sad. So we kind of just thought nothing of it, and we started talking to each other, looking at our phones, I don't know, talking about something. And we look back at the building, and he's not sitting on the chair anymore, and we're like, whoa, that was weird. He would have walked past us if he left. But we just assumed maybe he went around the back of the building, I don't know. Anyways, we're kind of looking at the building, and my friend goes, whoa, Jess, did you see that? And I was like, did I see what? And there's like, on the very top of the building, there's like a window. All the windows are boarded up, but this window, the board had kind of slanted a bit, so you can kind of see into the darkness of the building. And he was like, someone just waved get us. And I was like, well, that's impossible. Like, no one can get into that building. And he's like, no, Jess, like, I saw a hand waving from inside of that window. And I just got so creeped out and I was like, hey, we gotta leave. Like, I do not want to be here anymore. And yeah, those are my stories. I mean, I just think it's so fascinating, the history of this building and how it's now a college and there's all this like backstory, and it just, I like being creeped out. I don't know, it's weird, but check out the link in the description. Whoa, what's going on with my hair right now? I don't know what I did. Woo! Yeah, the link just goes to a 5-minute video just showing some footage of the campus and some old photos. It's pretty cool. I recommend checking it out. And yeah, I'm kind of sad that I finished college there. It was a really nice campus. It had so much history, and Humber's done such a good job of keeping the buildings the way they used to look. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this slightly creepy V-time. I actually have a story for you, my next video, and it's also kind of creepy. I don't know, I'm on this like creepy story theme. I guess it's a phase right now. I'm just weird like that. I even write scary stories all the time and freak myself out. Anyways, if you guys went to like a school or you have a house that has a weird history to it, totally write it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And yeah, I'm putting my Twitter, my Instagram in the description as well, so please follow me so we can be friends. And yeah, until next time guys, bye!